Ever wonder why it is that everyone seems so dumb as a kid? Why old dogs can't learn new tricks? Or why you always cringe when you think about yourself as an early teen? The answers to all of these questions and more can be found through developmental psychology.
The branch of psychology that studies physical, cognitive, and social changes throughout the lifespan.
One of the most important parts of developmental psychology is the concept of maturation, which are the biological growth processes that enable orderly changes in behavior, relatively uninfluenced by experience. In the womb, the amount of brain cells we have grows rapidly, at a rate of nearly 250,000 every minute, but by the time we're born, we have as many as we'll ever have. However, this does not mean we're as intelligent as we'll ever be, due to the fact that as young children, our brain cells have yet to create the neural networks that allow them to better communicate with one another. This leads to infants having very poor memories and motor skills until around the age of 4 or 5. Beyond the body's physical development of neural networks and motor abilities, children's cognitive abilities also develop greatly during these early years, introducing Jean Piaget. This was basically a guy who was developing intelligence tests for children and took great interest in their wrong answers. He wanted to learn why it is that children of certain ages made certain mistakes. He theorized that children pass through a series of stages of cognitive development, namely the sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational stages. The core concept behind the progression through of each of these stages was Piaget's idea that the brain builds concepts constantly, called schemas, that organize our world into things we can understand. Schemas work in two parts. First, through assimilating new information, essentially associating it with an existing concept, and then accommodating that schema, adjusting it so it better represents the concepts within it as a whole. For example, let's say I have a pet chihuahua. My schema for dogs would probably look something like this. Now, if I saw a Shiba Inu, I would probably be able to recognize it as a dog, and would thus assimilate it into my schema. On the other hand, if someone told me a Great Dane is a dog too, I would accommodate my schema by adjusting it to allow for dogs of all sizes, rather than just small ones.
Now let's talk about the stages of cognitive development.
The first stage is the sensory motor stage, which takes place between birth to around the age of 2. During this period of time, much of the baby's interactions with the world take place through sensory and motor interactions. These babies more or less live in the present, and anything they can't see just doesn't really exist for them. The ability to understand that things exist even when they are not looked at is called object permanence. Children that don't understand this will think objects they can't see disappeared, and will be surprised when they come back. After is the pre-operational stage, which lasts from about 2 to 6.5 years of age. At this point, the child can use language but won't completely understand logic and mental operations. One of the biggest things that marks the pre-operational and sensory motor stage is egocentrism, which Piaget defined as the inability of the pre-operational child to take another's point of view. A common example of this is a conversation that goes like this.
Hey Suizo, do you have a brother?
Yeah,
What's his name?
Jim.
Does Jim have a brother?
No.
One important part of children moving past their egocentrism is their progressive development of a theory of mind, which is essentially defined as people's ideas about their own and others' mental states. Those who have a poor theory of mind will have difficulty feeling empathy or making close relations with other people, as they will find themselves unable to understand how other people think. In fact, this impaired theory of mind serves as one of the principal symptoms of autism. Autism is a disorder that is marked by poor social skills, difficulty in communication, and difficulty in understanding others and their own state of mind.
Following the pre-operational stage is the concrete operational stage, which takes place from about ages 6 to 12, which marks the time when children begin to think logically about concrete events and become able to understand mathematical transformations and become able to reverse mathematical operations. The final stage, according to Piaget, is the formal operational stage. During this stage, people become able to apply logic to abstract concepts. This gives them the ability to comprehend and reason with hypotheticals and deduce the consequences of actions.
Alongside Piaget's stages of cognitive development, there are also a series of social developments that come about throughout a person's life, many of which are based on parental experiences in early childhood. The first of these social developments is stranger anxiety, which usually develops around 8 months and is later supplemented by the development of pretty intense feelings of attachment, particularly to their caregiver. Attached infants often express distress upon being left by their caregiver, and typically will be relieved upon their return.
A child's attachment to their parent serves as an important predictor of their happiness and capabilities later in life, as shown through Harry Harlow's experiments with baby monkeys. In his experiment, he first separated baby monkeys from their parents at birth, and then paired them with 2 mothers, one made out of wire but containing a bottle with food, and the other made of cloth but not having any food. Contrary to popular belief at the time, the monkeys overwhelmingly preferred the comfort of the cloth mother over the coldness of the wire mother. regardless of the fact that the wire mother provided nourishment. Additionally, when deprived of contact with their inanimate mothers, the monkeys were absolutely terrified and were incapable of doing anything at all until their mothers returned. One of the most important things shown by Harlow's studies of monkeys was the concept of basic trust, theorized by Erik Erikson, more on him later, which is the idea that the world is predictable and trustworthy, which, based on Harlow and other studies, is thought to be brought about in part by how someone is raised. Someone who doesn't develop an attitude of basic trust typically will have issues with talking to and trusting people later in life, although this is not always the case. Additionally, those who are unable to experience proper attachment as a child often lash out against others and struggle with close relationships. In fact, many people who are convicted of child abuse have been found to have been abused themselves, and thus likely were never able to experience attachment in a healthy way, leading to their behavior.
As children start getting older, they eventually reach adolescence, or the transitional period between childhood and adulthood. Typically, this is defined as a period between puberty to independence, and as such, its duration varies based on culture and from person to person. For example, in modern-day adolescence for women is thought to last about 12 and a half years on average, but in 1890 that number was 7.2. The official start of adolescence in most cases is the beginning of puberty, which is defined as a period of sexual maturation that signals when someone becomes able to reproduce. During this time, people's primary and secondary sexual characteristics develop. Primary sexual characteristics are the organs and body structures directly involved in sex, such as the ovaries, testes, and external genitalia, while secondary sexual characteristics are non-reproductive structures such as the breast and facial hair. It is also during this period that people begin to develop more complex reasoning ability, and alongside this, adolescents begin to develop morality.
Introducing Lawrence Kohlberg, a psychologist who was really interested in the process of development of morals. As a way to test people's moral development, he proposed the following dilemma, known as the Heinz dilemma. A woman was near death. There was one drug that the doctors thought might save her. It was a form of radium that a druggist in the same town had recently discovered. The drug was expensive to make, but the druggist was charging 10 times what the drug cost him to produce. He paid $200 for the radium and charged $2,000 for a small dose of the drug. The sick woman's husband, Heinz, went to everyone he knew to borrow the money, but he could only get together about $1,000, which is half of what it cost. He told the druggist that his wife was dying and asked him to sell it cheaper or let him pay later, but the druggist said, "No, I discovered the drug and I'm going to make money from it." So Heinz got desperate and broke into the man's laboratory to steal the drug for his wife. Should Heinz have broken into the laboratory to steal the drug? Why or why not? Based on the reasoning that his subjects provided for their answer, Kohlberg separated them into distinct levels of moral development. First was the pre-conventional stage of development, which is typically based around avoiding punishment or gaining rewards, and typically was present in people around the age of 9. Someone at this level of understanding would likely justify their reasoning by saying, he shouldn't steal the drug because then he'll get in trouble. By early adolescence, however, children will typically develop feelings of conventional morality, wherein they are able to take others' perspectives and typically base their morality on laws and social rules. Some people are able to develop even farther than this through attaining the post-conventional stage of morality, wherein one begins to understand universal ethical principles and the ideas of natural-born rights beyond the word of law. Another thing that is greatly developed during adolescence is the concept of identity, or one's own sense of self. Adolescents typically experiment greatly with different selves as they try and find a self that they feel most comfortable in. This is why early teenage years are often really embarrassing to look back at, because we can't help but think now, what was I thinking back then?
This idea of the development of an identity serves as a piece of a bigger theory of psychosocial development, developed by Erik Erikson. Erikson more or less theorized that people go through stages that all have their own crisis that they need to solve in order to properly get past. For example, very young children need to learn how to trust people rather than distrust everyone, and adolescents need to learn their identity or risk being confused for their whole life.
Even as we reach old age, however, the body still doesn't stop developing. For women, once they reach around the age of 50, they experience menopause, signifying, among other things, the end of a woman's fertility as a menstrual cycle stops. Physical changes, however, are not restricted only to women, as both men and women become less likely to experience short-term illnesses as a result of increased number of antibodies in the body. Cognitive changes occur as well as old age sets in. For one, fluid intelligence, or the ability to reason quickly and abstractly, declines with time, while crystallized intelligence or accumulated knowledge of verbal skills improve with age.